When my son Marcus told me we don't need you anymore at Christmas dinner, I quietly walked to my study and called my real estate agent. By the next morning, I had listed the $720,000 house he called home for immediate sale. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening in the comments. My name is Robert Davis, and I'm 68 years old. I've been a successful contractor and real estate investor for over 40 years now. Started with one small renovation project back in 1982, and built Davis Construction into one of the most respected building companies in our county. Today, my business portfolio is worth about $4.2 million, and I own 17 properties across 3 cities. My wife Carol died from a heart attack 2 years ago after 38 years of marriage. She was my best friend and my partner in everything we built together. We had 3 children, but this story is about my middle son Marcus, who is 34 years old now. Marcus works as a manager at a retail electronics store making about $55,000 per year. Marcus married his wife Jennifer 6 years ago, and they have 2 young children, ages 4 and 7. Jennifer works part-time as a dental assistant while focusing on raising their kids. Together, they make a decent middle-class income, but nothing close to what Carol and I built through decades of hard work and smart investments. After Carol died, I helped Marcus and his family by letting them live in one of my rental properties, rent-free. The house is worth $720,000 and sits in the best school district in our city. Dad, this is such a huge help while we're saving money for our own place, Marcus had said gratefully when I first made the offer 2 years ago. The house on Maple Street is a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage and a beautiful backyard where the grandchildren love to play. Monthly rent for similar properties in that neighborhood runs about $3,800. I was essentially giving Marcus and his family over $45,000 per year in free housing. Marcus seemed grateful when I first explained the arrangement after Carol's funeral. Dad, I promise we'll take good care of the house and be responsible tenants, he had said sincerely during our discussion. This means we can save money for a down payment on our own home while the kids are in excellent schools. I thought Marcus understood that my generosity came from love and wanting to help family during difficult times. But something started changing in Marcus's attitude about 6 months ago when he began making more demands about how I should modify the house to suit his family's preferences. Dad, the kids need a finished basement playroom, he would tell me regularly. You should invest in renovating the lower level so they have more space to grow up properly. His suggestions felt more like orders than requests from someone living there for free. Marcus also started making comments about my other properties and business decisions that bothered me during family visits. Dad, you should sell some of those rental houses and give us money for home improvements, he would say casually. This place needs updated bathrooms and a new kitchen to really work for our growing family. His advice ignored the fact that I was already providing them with free housing worth thousands of dollars monthly. The real problem started when Marcus began treating my house like it belonged to him, and he had authority to make decisions about it. Dad, I think we should replace the windows and upgrade the heating system, became typical conversations during Sunday dinners. The utility bills are getting expensive, and modern systems would save money long term. His assumptions about controlling property he didn't own were incredibly presumptuous. What bothered me most was Marcus's growing pattern of criticism about how I managed my rental properties and business investments. Dad, why do you charge other tenants so much rent when housing is already expensive? He would ask during visits. Shouldn't helping families be more important than making maximum profits at your age? His comments made me feel guilty for running legitimate businesses while he lived rent-free. During the past few months, Marcus started making long-term plans for the house that assumed he would be living there indefinitely without paying rent. "When the kids get older, we'll convert the garage into a home office," he would tell Jennifer within my hearing. "Dad's house has so much potential if we just invest in the right improvements over time." His fantasies about permanent free housing were getting out of control. Jennifer seemed comfortable with her husband's increasingly entitled attitude, and she never spoke up to remind Marcus about respecting the person who owned their home. "Marcus is right about needing more storage space," was typical support she would give. "Your dad should understand that growing families need houses that work for their lifestyle." Her failure to show appreciation for my generosity disappointed me deeply. Yesterday was Christmas Day, and I was looking forward to spending time with my grandchildren, despite Marcus's difficult behavior lately. I had no idea that he was planning to use this special holiday to completely destroy our family relationship with words that would change everything between us forever. Now let me tell you exactly how I built my fortune while Marcus learned to take everything for granted. This story starts 42 years ago, when I was just 26 years old, with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox full of basic construction equipment. Most people thought contracting work was too risky for a young man with no connections in the building industry. But I could see that our growing city would need skilled contractors for home renovations and new construction projects. I started Davis Construction with $800 in savings and pure determination to succeed in the building business. Carol supported me completely, even though we were living in a tiny apartment and eating beans and rice most nights to save money. "Robert, if you believe in this work, then I believe in you," she told me when I won my first kitchen renovation contract. We lived paycheck to paycheck while I built my reputation one job at a time. The breakthrough came when I won a contract to renovate 3 rental properties for a local real estate investor in 1985. The project was bigger than anything I had attempted before, but I knew it could establish my credibility in the construction market. Carol kept our books while I worked 14-hour days managing subcontractors and dealing with permits and inspections. That investor contract launched my career and led to bigger renovation projects over the following years. Within a decade, Davis Construction was handling new home construction, commercial renovations, and property development across our metropolitan area. I reinvested every dollar of profit back into the company to buy better equipment and hire the best workers available in our region. By the time Marcus was born in 1990, we were making real money and building a solid foundation for our family's future. But Carol and I never forgot our humble beginnings or the sacrifices required to build something from nothing. "Robert, let's make sure our children understand the value of hard work," Carol would say regularly. "Success should be earned through effort, not just expected because you're born into the right family." Marcus grew up watching his parents work long hours to build our family business. He had chores around the house, earned his allowance through good behavior, and worked summer jobs at construction sites during high school. "Marcus, everything we have today came from treating people fairly and working harder than our competitors," I taught him. "Never give up when things get difficult, and always respect the people who help you succeed." Marcus seemed to appreciate these lessons about character and business principles. When Marcus went to college, I paid for his education completely so he could focus on his studies without financial stress. State University Business Program for 4 years, $72,000 in total costs, including room and board. Marcus graduated with decent grades and found his retail management job immediately after graduation. Carol and I were proud of the responsible young man he had become through education and hard work. After Marcus started his career, I continued supporting him financially when he needed help with major expenses. Down payment for his first apartment, $15,000. Car purchase when his college vehicle finally broke down, $22,000. Wedding expenses for his marriage to Jennifer, $41,000. I was happy to help my son build a stable life while establishing himself in his management career. Marcus always showed genuine gratitude for my help during those early years of his marriage. "Dad, thank you for giving me such a great start in life," he would say sincerely during family dinners. "I know how hard you and Mom worked to build Davis Construction, and I want to make you proud through my own achievements." Marcus understood that my generosity came from love and decades of sacrifice to build our family's wealth. When Marcus and Jennifer had their first child 6 years ago, I was excited about becoming a grandfather and potentially passing on our family business legacy to the next generation. "Carol, this means Davis Construction might continue for another generation," I told my wife. We both looked forward to watching our grandchildren grow up with the security and opportunities that our hard work had created. But something started changing in Marcus's attitude after they had the second child and got comfortable with the financial support I provided for their growing family. The grateful son slowly became someone who expected financial assistance without showing much appreciation for the person providing it. "Dad, we need help with the kids' daycare expenses," became typical requests without acknowledgement of previous support or gratitude for ongoing help. I started noticing that Marcus's thank you messages became shorter and less sincere over time. Instead of detailed appreciation for specific help with expenses or gifts, he would give quick responses like, "That's good," or just nod when I offered financial assistance. The personal connection and genuine gratitude were disappearing as he became more comfortable with receiving support from his successful father. What bothered me most was Marcus's growing assumption that my wealth should automatically be available for his family's lifestyle improvements without him having to ask politely or show real appreciation. He would make statements like, "The kids need," instead of, "Could you please help us with?" when discussing expenses he wanted me to cover. The entitlement was replacing the gratitude I had initially received for my generosity. Carol seemed to notice Marcus's changing attitude during her final years, but she was too sick to address the family dynamics directly. "Robert, make sure people appreciate your help," she told me during one of our last conversations in the hospital. "Don't let anyone take your generosity for granted just because they get used to receiving it." Her wisdom was proving more important than I had realized at the time. The construction business continued growing despite Marcus's entitled attitude, but I started worrying about whether he understood the work and sacrifice that had created the wealth he was now treating as his automatic right. Annual revenue had reached $2.8 million last year. Property portfolio was worth over $4 million, but success means nothing if family members don't respect the person who created it. During Carol's final illness, Marcus was about to show me exactly what he thought about the father who had helped him for 34 years. Let me take you back to that terrible Christmas day when Marcus said the words that started my perfect house revenge. It was December 25th, and I had been looking forward to spending the holiday with my grandchildren at their house on Maple Street. I arrived at noon with gifts for the kids and a homemade apple pie, Carol's recipe that the family had always loved during our holiday celebrations. Marcus answered the door looking annoyed about something that was clearly bothering him before I even arrived. "Dad, you're early," he said, without any Christmas greeting or appreciation for my visit. "The kids are still opening presents, and Jennifer is finishing dinner preparations in the kitchen." His tone was cold and unwelcoming towards someone who had been paying for their comfortable lifestyle for 2 years. "Sorry, Marcus," I replied, trying to stay positive despite his unfriendly attitude. "I can wait in the living room until everyone's ready for dinner." I was hoping his mood would improve once we started the Christmas celebration I had been looking forward to all week. The grandchildren were excited to see me and immediately wanted to show me their new toys and Christmas presents. "Grandpa Robert, look at my new bike," my 7-year-old granddaughter Emma said proudly. "Santa brought it, and it's exactly what I asked for." Her innocent joy made me happy despite the tension I was feeling from Marcus's cold welcome. Jennifer came out from the kitchen and gave me a polite hug for Christmas. "Robert, thanks for coming over today," she said with forced friendliness. "Dinner will be ready in about an hour if you want to relax and watch the kids play with their new toys." Her appreciation felt rehearsed rather than genuine, like she was going through the motions of holiday politeness. We spent the afternoon playing games with the children and talking about their school achievements and Christmas wishes. The grandchildren were happy and excited, which made me glad that my free housing was providing them with a stable home environment. "Grandpa, will you come to my school play next month?" my 4-year-old grandson asked. "I'm playing a wise man in the Christmas story." But I noticed Marcus becoming more irritated as the day continued, especially when I made casual comments about the house maintenance and improvements he had been requesting. "Marcus, I've been thinking about that basement renovation you mentioned," I said during our conversation. "Maybe we could discuss the details and timeline after the holidays." His reaction was unexpectedly hostile and defensive. During dinner, I mentioned that one of my other rental properties needed some work, and I was planning to handle the repairs myself. "Dad, you're getting too old to be climbing ladders and doing physical labor," Marcus said dismissively. "Maybe it's time to hire other people to handle your property maintenance instead of trying to do everything yourself." His condescending tone toward my capabilities was hurtful and disrespectful. That's when Marcus decided to escalate our conversation into the argument that would change everything between us forever. "Dad, there are some things about this living arrangement that you need to understand," he began in a tone that made me nervous about what was coming next. "Jennifer and I have been talking, and we think it's time for some changes in how this family relationship works." "What do you mean, Marcus?" I asked, genuinely confused about what changes he was referring to. "Is there something about the house or our arrangement that's made you uncomfortable?" I was trying to understand what could have caused his hostile attitude during what should have been a pleasant Christmas dinner. That's when Marcus delivered the words that shattered our family relationship completely. "We don't need you anymore," he said with shocking cruelty. "Jennifer and I can handle our own finances and family decisions without your constant involvement and opinions." His words hit me like a physical blow from someone I had loved and supported unconditionally for 34 years. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" I asked, stunned by his declaration that they didn't need their father and grandfather anymore. "I'm your dad and the children's grandfather. How can you say you don't need me?" I couldn't process how someone could make such a cruel statement on Christmas Day to someone who had been nothing but generous and supportive. "You think because you own this house you can control our family decisions," Marcus continued with increasing anger. "But Jennifer and I make our own choices about our lives and our children. Your opinions about our lifestyle don't matter because we're independent adults who don't need your help anymore." His attack on my role as father and grandfather was devastating and completely unexpected. Jennifer sat there supporting her husband's cruel words toward the man who was providing their free housing. "Robert, Marcus is right that we need to establish boundaries about family involvement, she said firmly. We appreciate the house, but we don't want strings attached that make us feel obligated to consider your opinions about everything. Her backup of Marcus's attack was almost as hurtful as his direct assault on our relationship. I sat there at their Christmas dinner table, surrounded by the grandchildren who had just been told their grandfather wasn't needed anymore. The man whose generosity had made their comfortable life possible had just been dismissed like some unwelcome interference in their family happiness. The house we're living in, Marcus added with a dismissive laugh. We'll figure out our own housing situation when we're ready to move. But we don't need you managing our lives or making decisions about our future anymore. His casual dismissal of the $720,000 in free housing showed complete disrespect for my generosity and love. That evening, I drove home alone and walked straight to my study to call my real estate agent about putting the Maple Street house on the market immediately. After Marcus's cruel declaration that they didn't need me anymore, I drove home alone to the empty house where Carol and I had lived for 36 years. The Christmas celebration I had looked forward to all week had turned into a nightmare of disrespect and family betrayal. Sitting in my study that evening, I pulled out the property documents that showed exactly what Marcus had just dismissed so carelessly when he told me they didn't need their father anymore. The first document was the deed to the house on Maple Street that Marcus called home. Property owned by Robert Davis was clearly printed at the top of the legal paperwork. $720,000 in current market value according to the latest assessment. Marcus and his family had been living there rent-free for exactly 2 years, saving them over $91,000 in housing costs. I found the rental market analysis I had done last year, showing what similar properties in that neighborhood were charging for monthly rent. 4-bedroom colonials with 2-car garages, $3,800 per month. 3-bedroom houses with similar amenities, $3,200 monthly. Marcus's family was receiving the equivalent of $45,600 annually in free housing benefits. The most painful document was the letter I had written to Marcus when I first offered them the house after Carol's funeral. Dear Marcus, your mother and I always wanted to help our children build successful lives, it began. This house represents our love for you and our hope that you'll use this opportunity to save money and provide stability for your growing family. The letter expressed pure generosity towards someone who had just declared he didn't need his father anymore. But looking at these property documents also reminded me of something important that Marcus had clearly forgotten during his cruel Christmas attack. Robert Davis was not just someone who had helped them with housing. I was the legal owner with absolute authority to sell, rent, or modify the living arrangements at any time I chose. The property management folder showed exactly how much money I had invested in maintaining and improving the house while Marcus lived there for free. New roof repairs, $12,000. HVAC system maintenance, $4,800. Kitchen appliance upgrades, $7,200. Total improvements, over $24,000 invested in property that Marcus thought he could live in indefinitely without appreciation. I also found the detailed breakdown of all the financial support I had given Marcus over his 34 years of life. College education, $72,000. Wedding costs, $41,000. Apartment down payment, $15,000. Car purchase assistance, $22,000. Emergency help over the years, another $38,000. Total support provided, over $188,000 for someone who said he didn't need me. The financial records showed a pattern that Marcus had apparently forgotten while declaring his independence from my involvement. His retail management salary of $55,000 plus Jennifer's part-time income couldn't have supported their comfortable middle-class lifestyle without my ongoing assistance. The house they lived in, the cars they drove, the children's activities and clothes, everything had been subsidized by the father Marcus had just dismissed as unnecessary. Looking at my estate planning documents made Marcus's Christmas behavior even more insulting than I had realized during our dinner confrontation. Marcus Davis shall inherit 40% of Davis Construction and associated properties upon his father's death, the will stated clearly. The son who had declared he didn't need his father was scheduled to receive over $1.6 million simply because he had been born into the right family. My phone had been silent all evening, with no calls from Marcus to apologize for his cruel behavior or check on my well-being after such a hurtful Christmas experience. The man whose inheritance I had been protecting through careful estate planning couldn't even be bothered to call his father after delivering such disrespectful treatment. His silence was almost as painful as his direct attack. The property tax records showed that I had been paying over $18,000 annually in taxes and insurance for the house Marcus lived in rent-free. 2 years of housing costs, taxes, insurance, and improvements totaled over $137,000 that I had invested in someone who didn't appreciate the person providing it. The father he had dismissed controlled every aspect of his comfortable living situation. The most ironic part of reviewing these documents was understanding that Marcus had attacked the very person whose generosity was funding his family's comfortable assumptions about their housing security. Without my free house, his family would be completely dependent on his middle-class salary for housing in an expensive market. The father he had dismissed controlled their entire residential stability. I found the real estate agent contact information I would need to begin selling the Maple Street property first thing after Christmas. Patricia Henderson had handled several of my property transactions over the past 15 years and understood my investment strategy and family relationships. Patricia will know exactly how to price this house for quick sale, I said to myself as I organized the paperwork. The banking account information showed that selling the house would provide over $700,000 in cash that could be reinvested in properties where tenants would show appreciation for their landlord. Marcus's cruel Christmas words had opened up possibilities I had never considered before his declaration of independence. Sitting there in Carol's favorite chair that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced since my wife's death 2 years earlier. I felt like I had real power over someone who had hurt me deeply and shown complete disrespect for my role in their comfortable life. The son who didn't need me anymore was about to discover exactly what independence meant when applied to housing and family support. Tomorrow, I would start the process that would teach Marcus what "we don't need you anymore" really meant when applied to property ownership and family generosity. The morning after Marcus's cruel Christmas attack, I woke up in my empty house with a clear plan about what I needed to do to teach him about property ownership and respect. He thought he could tell me they didn't need their father anymore, while having no idea that Robert Davis controlled every aspect of their comfortable housing situation. Marcus had declared independence from my involvement without understanding that his secure assumptions depended completely on my continued generosity and legal ownership. I spent the morning organizing my strategy for maximum impact on Marcus's understanding of who really owned the house he called home. This wasn't going to be some emotional outburst or angry confrontation that he could dismiss as his father's hurt feelings. This was going to be a calculated property demonstration that would permanently change his assumptions about independence from Robert Davis's involvement in their family security. The first call I made was to my real estate agent, Patricia Henderson, at 8:30 sharp the day after Christmas. "Patricia, I need to list the Maple Street property for immediate sale based on recent family developments," I said calmly. "My son made it very clear on Christmas Day that he doesn't need his father's help anymore, so I want to sell the house he's been living in rent-free." Patricia had handled my property transactions for 15 years and would understand the seriousness of this situation. "Robert, tell me exactly what happened," Patricia said, as I described Marcus's cruel declaration that they didn't need me and his dismissive attitude toward the person providing their free housing. "Based on what you're telling me, you have complete legal authority to sell this property anytime you want," she confirmed. "It's your house, and tenants don't have ownership rights just because they're family members." Her professional advice gave me confidence to proceed with teaching Marcus about consequences. I decided to price the house aggressively for quick sale rather than waiting months for maximum profit. $700,000 would attract serious buyers immediately and send a clear message to Marcus that his comfortable housing situation was ending permanently. The total disruption to his family's stability would be complete within 60 days if we moved quickly with motivated purchasers. But I also wanted to time the sale in a way that would teach Marcus the most important lessons about respect and family relationships. "Patricia, I want to put the for sale sign up this weekend when Marcus and his family are home," I explained. "They need to discover from their neighbors that their house is being sold, not from me directly. The shock would be educational about taking property owners for granted. The timing of this house sale would be crucial for maximum impact on Marcus's comfortable assumptions about their housing security." I decided to wait until New Year's Day to install the for sale sign, giving Marcus exactly 1 week to feel completely secure in his declaration of independence, before discovering the consequences of disrespecting property owners. I calculated the complete disruption this would cause to Marcus's family planning and financial stability. Without the free housing, they would need to find rental property costing over $3,000 monthly or qualify for a mortgage on their combined income of about $75,000 annually. His $55,000 salary plus Jennifer's part-time work wouldn't easily support the lifestyle they had been enjoying with my assistance. But more importantly, Marcus would discover that his hostile attitude toward family relationships had eliminated their housing security completely. The father who didn't need to be involved in their lives would no longer be involved in providing their comfortable living situation. Marcus would have to explain to his children why they were moving, because Daddy had been disrespectful to the grandfather who owned their home. I also planned to document everything that had happened during the Christmas dinner confrontation for potential legal challenges to my right to sell my own property. If Marcus tried to claim that his family had tenant rights or that my actions were excessive, I needed to be prepared with detailed records of his exact words and hostile attitude toward the property owner. The most satisfying part of my planning was knowing that Marcus's desire to be independent from my involvement would be granted in exactly the way he didn't want. He had been uncomfortable with my opinions about their lifestyle and didn't want me managing their housing decisions. Now he would have the complete independence he had demanded, along with the financial responsibility that came with it. I spent the afternoon reviewing all my property management documents to make sure Marcus couldn't challenge my right to sell the house based on verbal agreements or family expectations. The lease agreement was month to month with 30-day notice required, not some legal obligation that protected his family's housing regardless of their behavior toward the owner. Patricia called me back that evening with market analysis for quick sale pricing. "Robert, I've prepared comparable sales data showing we can price this house at $699,000 for immediate buyer interest, she explained. We should have multiple offers within 2 weeks if you're serious about moving quickly. The power to completely alter Marcus's family housing situation was now in motion, waiting for the right moment to teach him about respect. I also prepared talking points for when I would inevitably have to explain my decision to other family members and community friends. Marcus made it very clear that he doesn't need his father anymore, I would say calmly. I'm simply ensuring that property ownership goes to people who value and respect their relationships with the seller. The logic would be unassailable and completely based on Marcus's own cruel words. That evening, I drove by the Maple Street house where Marcus and his family were enjoying their comfortable evening routine, while having no idea that their Christmas cruelty had already started the process of losing their home. The son who didn't need his father was about to discover exactly what that independence was worth financially. Over the weekend, I watched Marcus enjoy his normal family life, while having no knowledge that his declaration of independence had cost his children their stable housing situation. 3 days after I called Patricia about listing the house, my phone started ringing frantically on Friday evening. It was Marcus calling me at home in complete panic about something his neighbor had mentioned during a casual conversation. "Dad, Mrs. Thompson said she heard from someone at the real estate office that you've been making inquiries about selling houses on Maple Street," he said urgently. "Please tell me there's been some kind of misunderstanding about what you're planning." "Marcus, that sounds like normal property management business," I replied calmly, like I had no idea what could be causing his concern. Real estate agents handle market analysis and property evaluations regularly as investment portfolios change. I wanted to hear exactly how Marcus had discovered my actions before confirming his worst fears about losing his free housing. "Dad, Mrs. Thompson specifically mentioned that Patricia Henderson was asking about recent sales in our neighborhood," Marcus continued with worry growing in his voice. "She thought I should know in case there were property issues I needed to address with you directly." He was starting to understand that his Christmas behavior might have triggered serious housing consequences for his family. I stayed completely calm while listening to Marcus's growing panic about his family's housing security. "Marcus, maybe Mrs. Thompson misunderstood some routine real estate research," I said matter-of-factly. "Sometimes neighbors hear partial conversations and make incorrect assumptions about property transactions." I was enjoying his slow realization that Christmas cruelty might have cost his family their comfortable home. "Dad, are you planning to sell our house?" Marcus asked directly, his voice getting more desperate. Because Mrs. Thompson seemed to think there were serious discussions happening about listing properties on our street. He was starting to connect his declaration that they didn't need me with the real estate activities that were now threatening his family's housing security. "Marcus, what makes you think it's your house?" I asked innocently. "Are you suggesting that something you said on Christmas Day might have influenced my decisions about property I own?" I wanted him to directly acknowledge his cruel words before revealing the full scope of their consequences. That's when Marcus began realizing there might be serious repercussions for his Christmas declaration that they didn't need their father anymore. "Dad, please tell me you're not selling the house because of what I said during Christmas dinner," he said desperately. "We can work out any family disagreements without involving our housing situation and the children's stability." The panic in his voice told me he was starting to understand that disrespecting property owners could affect his family's comfortable assumptions about security. "Marcus, what family disagreements are you worried about?" I asked directly. "I thought you made it very clear that you don't need me anymore and can handle your own housing decisions." I wanted him to repeat his cruel words and understand exactly what he had said to his generous father. Within an hour of our phone conversation, Marcus showed up at my house unannounced, looking completely panicked and defeated. He had left work early and driven straight to my home to confront me about the real estate activities that were threatening his family's entire living situation. "Dad, we need to talk about whatever you've done regarding our house," he said frantically as he stood on my front porch. "Come in, son," I said calmly, enjoying his obvious distress about facing consequences for his Christmas actions. What seems to be the problem with my property management decisions? I wanted to hear him explain his panic before revealing the full scope of what his holiday behavior had cost them. Marcus sat down in my living room and started listing his fears about the house being sold. "Dad, if you're planning to sell the house because you're angry about Christmas comments, you're going to destroy our family's stability," he said frantically. "The kids are settled in their schools, Jennifer has friends in the neighborhood, and our entire life is built around living on Maple Street." His confession revealed how completely their comfortable existence depended on my continued generosity. "Marcus, why would your housing be in danger?" I asked patiently. "I thought you made it clear that you don't need your father's involvement in your family decisions anymore." I wanted him to acknowledge that his hostile attitude had created this crisis through his own disrespectful words and entitled behavior. "Dad, I was frustrated about something else that day and didn't mean what I said about not needing you," Marcus replied desperately, trying to minimize his cruel Christmas attack. "You know how much our family appreciates the house and how important it is for the children's stability." But his explanation ignored the specific cruelty of telling someone they weren't needed anymore on Christmas Day. I decided it was time to give him a hint about the consequences his Christmas behavior had created for their family's housing security. "Marcus, when you told me you don't need me anymore, what did you think would happen to housing arrangements I was providing for family members?" I asked calmly. "Did you expect me to continue funding the comfortable lifestyle of people who declared their independence from my involvement?" "Dad, what are you saying?" Marcus asked with growing dread in his voice. He was starting to realize that his cruel words might have permanently damaged their housing prospects. "Are you actually planning to sell our house because of one conversation we had during a stressful holiday?" His question revealed that he still didn't understand the seriousness of disrespecting the person who controlled their entire living situation. "Marcus, it wasn't just one conversation," I explained firmly. "It was you telling your father that his family doesn't need him anymore while living rent-free in property he owns." The education about consequences was beginning, and Marcus was starting to understand the magnitude of his Christmas mistake. The son who had declared independence from his father was learning that housing security and family relationships work together when it comes to property ownership and generosity. After Marcus's panicked visit about the house sale, I realized I needed solid evidence to support my decision to remove his family from my property permanently. If Marcus was going to challenge my right to sell my own house, or claim that his Christmas behavior wasn't serious enough to justify losing their free housing, I wanted bulletproof documentation of 34 years of growing entitlement and diminishing appreciation. I spent the next day gathering evidence that told the complete story of Marcus's entitled attitude and gradual loss of gratitude for his generous father. I started by organizing every property document related to the Maple Street house that Marcus thought belonged to him. Original purchase deed from 1998. Robert Davis, sole owner, clearly printed on the legal paperwork. Mortgage satisfaction letter from 2006 showing the house was paid off completely through my construction business profits. Property tax records for the past 25 years, all paid by Robert Davis without any contribution from Marcus during his 2 years of free housing. The insurance policies showed my name as the sole policyholder and beneficiary for the $720,000 property. Homeowners coverage, liability protection, and property damage insurance, all paid annually by me while Marcus lived there rent-free. His family was protected by insurance policies they had never contributed to or even acknowledged in their comfortable assumptions about housing security. I found every repair and improvement invoice from Marcus's 2 years of free housing. New roof installation, $12,000. HVAC system upgrade, $8,400. Kitchen appliance replacement, $7,200. Bathroom renovation, $9,800. Total property improvements, $37,400 invested in a house Marcus thought he could live in indefinitely without appreciation. But the most important evidence was the gradual change in Marcus's attitude toward my generosity over the past several years. The thank you notes from early in his career were warm and detailed. Dad, your help with the car down payment means everything to my independence and financial stability. Jennifer and I are so grateful to have a father who cares about our success and happiness. Those heartfelt expressions of appreciation had slowly disappeared as Marcus became more comfortable receiving support. I found email exchanges where Marcus had questioned my property management decisions and suggested that I should spend more money on house improvements for his family's comfort. Dad, the basement really needs finishing so the kids have a proper playroom, he had written 4 months ago. Shouldn't your grandchildren's comfort be a priority when you're planning property investments? His entitled tone ignored all the previous improvements I had provided. The most damaging evidence was Marcus's pattern of making demands rather than requests when he wanted modifications to the house. Dad, we need central air conditioning installed before summer. Became typical messages that assumed my money was automatically available for their lifestyle preferences. The children deserve the same comfort as their classmates' families, he would add, like I owed them upper-class amenities in free housing. I documented specific instances where Marcus had criticized my other business decisions and suggested that I should redirect my resources toward his family's housing needs. Dad, why do you need so many rental properties when you could invest more in this house where your grandchildren live? He had asked during a family dinner last spring. At your age, shouldn't family legacy be more important than business expansion? His attempt to guilt me into spending more on his comfort was manipulative and disrespectful. The Christmas and birthday gift records showed Marcus's escalating expectations for expensive presents without corresponding increases in gratitude or appreciation. 2022, $800 in gifts for the children plus family dinner expenses. 2023, over $1,200 including electronics and toys for the grandchildren. 2024, nearly $2,000 for Christmas presents that received brief thank you texts instead of genuine appreciation. I found records of conversations where Marcus had made assumptions about inheriting my properties without any acknowledgement that these were gifts rather than entitlements. When Dad gets older, we'll probably need to help him manage all these rental houses, he had told Jennifer during a phone call I accidentally overheard. This house will obviously become ours eventually, since we've been living here and maintaining it. His casual planning for my assets was shocking and presumptuous. The most insulting evidence was Marcus's attempt to control my charitable giving and business investments. Dad, why are you donating money to the church building fund when your grandchildren could benefit from those resources? He had complained angrily last month. Family should come first before giving money to organizations that don't appreciate your generosity. His criticism of my philanthropy while demanding more for himself revealed his selfish character. I documented Marcus's pattern of dismissive comments about my age and business capabilities that showed growing disrespect for the person providing his family's housing. "Dad, maybe you should let me help with property management decisions since you're getting older," became regular suggestions that ignored my continued success. "Sometimes older people don't understand modern real estate markets," he would add condescendingly. The social media evidence was particularly revealing about Marcus's public attitude toward my role in their comfortable lifestyle. Photos of family gatherings at the Maple Street house never mentioned who owned the property they were enjoying. Posts about the children's achievements and activities didn't acknowledge the person whose free housing made their stability possible. Marcus was happy to enjoy the benefits of my generosity, while keeping my contributions invisible to his friends. Most importantly, I found evidence of Marcus's complete lack of genuine appreciation for the housing security I had provided for his growing family. "The house we're living in will be perfect for the kids to grow up in," he had told his co-workers during a conversation I overheard at a community event. "We're so lucky to have found such a great neighborhood with excellent schools." His casual assumption that their housing was permanent showed no understanding that free rent could be revoked. The Christmas Day evidence was the final piece that justified removing his family from my property. "We don't need you anymore," were direct quotes that Jennifer could verify. Marcus's cruel declaration of independence from family relationships had been witnessed by his own children, making his words even more damaging and hurtful to the grandfather providing their home. Tomorrow, I would use all this evidence to show everyone exactly why Marcus's family had lost their housing and comfortable assumptions about property ownership. Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, Patricia Henderson arrived at the Maple Street house with the for sale sign that would teach Marcus the most important lesson of his 34 years about property ownership and respect. I watched from my car parked across the street as she hammered the wooden post into the front yard, while Marcus and his family were inside, enjoying their weekend breakfast routine. The bright red and white sign reading "For Sale, Patricia Henderson Realty" was now prominently displayed for the entire neighborhood to see. Within 20 minutes of the sign installation, I could see Marcus looking out his front window with confusion and growing panic on his face. He opened the door and walked toward the sign like he couldn't believe what he was seeing in his own front yard. The man who had declared he didn't need his father anymore was discovering that someone else controlled every aspect of his family's housing security. My phone started ringing before Patricia had even finished collecting her tools and driving away from the property. "Dad, what is this for sale sign doing in our front yard?" Marcus said frantically when I answered his call. "There has to be some kind of mistake because nobody told us anything about selling this house." His panic was obvious as he faced the reality that his comfortable assumptions about permanent housing were completely wrong. "Marcus, that's a standard real estate sign indicating that the property is available for purchase," I replied calmly, enjoying his shock about discovering the consequences of his Christmas behavior. "Patricia Henderson is handling the listing and marketing for interested buyers." I wanted Marcus to understand that his cruel words had triggered real actions with permanent results for his family's living situation. "Dad, you can't seriously be selling the house we live in," Marcus said desperately, his voice shaking as neighbors started walking by to look at the sign. "Our children live here. Jennifer has made friends in this neighborhood, and our entire life is built around this being our home." His confession revealed how completely his family's stability depended on property they had never owned or contributed to financially. "Marcus, what makes you think this is your home?" I asked innocently. "Are you suggesting that telling your father you don't need him anymore should somehow protect your access to his property. I wanted him to connect his Christmas cruelty directly to the housing crisis he was now facing. Within an hour, Marcus showed up at my house without calling first, looking more panicked than I had ever seen him in his entire adult life. He was holding a printed copy of the online real estate listing that showed detailed photos of every room in the house his family had been living in rent-free. "Dad, I found our house listed for $699,000 on the real estate website," he said frantically as he stood on my front porch. "Come in, Marcus," I said calmly, curious to hear exactly how he planned to justify keeping free housing after declaring independence from his father. "What seems to be the problem with my property being available for sale to qualified buyers?" I wanted to hear him explain why his Christmas behavior shouldn't have housing consequences. Marcus sat down at my kitchen table and spread out the printed listing pages, showing professional photos of the bedrooms where his children slept every night. "Dad, these are pictures of our kids' rooms," he said desperately. "How can you be selling their home without even discussing it with us first?" His question revealed that he still didn't understand that tenants don't control property decisions just because they're family members. "Marcus, those are pictures of bedrooms in a house I own," I corrected him firmly. "Your children have been living there as guests in my property, not as owners with decision-making authority." I wanted him to understand the difference between temporary housing arrangements and actual ownership rights. "Dad, we've been living here for 2 years," Marcus protested frantically. "We've made this place our home, and the kids are settled in their schools and activities. You can't just sell our stability out from under us because of one conversation we had at Christmas." But his plea ignored the fact that his cruel words had revealed his true character, rather than some temporary emotional outburst. I decided it was time to teach Marcus about the legal realities of property ownership and tenant relationships. "Marcus, let me show you something about real estate law and family housing arrangements," I said, pulling out the documents that would educate him about his actual situation. The property deed, lease agreement, and ownership papers were all clearly labeled with Robert Davis as the sole legal owner. "This house belongs to me completely," I explained systematically. "You have been living here through my generosity, not through any legal right or ownership claim." The documentation was overwhelming proof that Marcus's family had no authority over property decisions, regardless of how long they had been receiving free housing. Marcus stared at the ownership documents with growing horror as he realized his family's housing security had always been dependent on maintaining good relationships with the property owner. "Dad, what do you want us to do?" he asked desperately. "Where are we supposed to live if you sell this house?" His panic showed that he finally understood the financial reality of independence from family support. "Marcus, you told me very clearly that you don't need me anymore," I reminded him calmly. "Now you can find your own housing like the independent adults you declared yourself to be on Christmas Day." The perfect justice in my response was obvious to both of us as he faced the consequences of disrespecting his generous father. The son who had dismissed his father's importance was learning exactly what property ownership meant when applied to family relationships and housing security. After I showed Marcus the property ownership documents that proved he had no legal rights to the house, he sat there in complete shock, staring at the deed that clearly showed Robert Davis as the sole owner. The for sale sign in his front yard had just taught him the most expensive lesson of his life about family relationships and property security. His comfortable assumptions about permanent housing had been shattered by his own Christmas cruelty toward the father who controlled everything. "Dad, please tell me there's some way to fix this terrible mistake," Marcus said desperately. his voice shaking as he realized the magnitude of what his Christmas behavior had cost his family. "You can't seriously be forcing us to move because of things I said during one stressful conversation." His panic was obvious as he faced the reality that his cruel words had eliminated their housing security completely. "Marcus, it wasn't one stressful conversation," I replied calmly, staying in complete control of the situation. "It was you telling your father that his family doesn't need him anymore while living rent-free in his property. I wanted him to understand that his Christmas attack had revealed his true character rather than some temporary mistake." Marcus tried to minimize his disrespectful behavior and convince me that he deserved another chance to maintain their housing arrangement. "Dad, I was overwhelmed about work stress and holiday pressure," he said frantically. "I didn't mean to hurt your feelings or show disrespect for everything you've done for our family over the years." But his explanation ignored the fact that stress doesn't create cruelty. It reveals character flaws that were already there. "Marcus, you told me that you don't need me anymore," I reminded him. Those weren't words spoken in anger. They were a calculated declaration of independence from my involvement in your lives. I wanted Marcus to confront the specific cruelty of rejecting someone who had been nothing but generous and supportive to his family for decades. Jennifer arrived at my house 30 minutes later, having heard about the for sale sign from Marcus's panicked phone call. "Robert, surely we can work out some compromise that protects our family's stability," she said desperately as she entered my living room. "Marcus realizes he made serious mistakes, and we're both willing to do whatever it takes to save our housing situation." Her panic was clear as she faced losing the free accommodation that had made their comfortable lifestyle possible. "Jennifer, this isn't about compromise," I replied firmly. "This is the natural consequence of your husband declaring that your family doesn't need his father anymore." I wanted her to understand that Marcus's cruel words had permanent housing implications that couldn't be apologized away or negotiated back to their previous arrangement. Marcus broke down completely as he faced the practical implications of losing their free housing. "Dad, the kids love their schools. Jennifer has friends in the neighborhood, and our entire life is built around living on Maple Street," he sobbed. "How can I tell them we're moving because I said stupid things during a family argument?" His confession revealed how completely their family stability had depended on housing they had never earned or paid for. "Marcus, maybe you should have thought about that before telling your father he wasn't needed anymore," I said without sympathy. "You made it very clear that my involvement in your lives was unwelcome and inappropriate." The education about consequences was continuing, and Marcus was finally understanding that disrespecting property owners has permanent costs. Jennifer tried a different approach by offering to make amends for Marcus's behavior and promising that he would change his attitude permanently. "Robert, we'll attend family counseling and Marcus will write formal apologies to everyone for his disrespectful Christmas behavior," she said frantically. "He'll volunteer at senior centers to learn appreciation for older people and the wisdom they provide." But their promises felt empty after 2 years of growing entitlement and diminishing gratitude. "Jennifer, your apologies are motivated by losing housing, not by genuine remorse for hurting someone who loved your family unconditionally," I pointed out. "How can I trust that Marcus's respect is real rather than financially motivated?" The timing of their crisis made their sudden change in attitude obviously artificial and self-serving. After listening to Marcus and Jennifer beg for forgiveness and housing restoration for over 2 hours, I was ready to announce my final decision about our family relationship and property arrangements. "Marcus, here are my conditions if you want any personal relationship with me going forward," I said clearly. First, you will publicly acknowledge that your Christmas behavior was cruel and unacceptable toward someone who had been supporting your family generously. Second, you will demonstrate through your actions that you understand family relationships require mutual respect and appreciation, I continued. Third, you will treat me with genuine dignity, not because you want housing, but because I'm your father and your children's grandfather. Marcus was nodding desperately, willing to agree to anything that might restore some hope of keeping their home. Most importantly, you will accept that property ownership gives me complete authority over housing decisions, regardless of your family's preferences, I concluded. I will not tolerate being told I'm not needed by people whose security I'm providing. Both of them agreed immediately to all my conditions, because they had no choice if they wanted any relationship with me. However, I had one more announcement that shocked Marcus and Jennifer completely. Marcus, the house sale is going forward regardless of whether you meet these conditions, I said calmly. Your family will need to find new housing within 60 days when the sale closes. His face went completely white as he realized his comfortable housing assumptions were destroyed forever. Marcus, you said you don't need me anymore, so now you can provide your own housing like the independent adults you declared yourself to be, I explained. $699,000 will help me invest in properties where tenants show appreciation for their landlord. The perfect justice in my decision was clear to everyone in the room. The son who had declared independence from his father had learned the permanent cost of disrespecting the person who had made his family's security possible. 4 months have passed since I sold the Maple Street house for $699,000. And I'm here today to tell you exactly how my life changed after setting clear boundaries with a son who had taken my generosity completely for granted. The shock Marcus faced when he lost his free housing taught him lessons about respect and consequences that his comfortable assumptions had never required him to learn. Marcus followed through on every condition I had set for maintaining any personal relationship, though he would never get another free house from his father. He sent written apologies to our entire extended family, explaining his disrespectful Christmas behavior and what he had learned about appreciating family elders. I was wrong to tell my father that we didn't need him while living in his house rent-free, he wrote to everyone. Robert Davis deserved gratitude and respect, not cruel rejection on Christmas Day. His public acknowledgement of wrongdoing was exactly what I had required for any chance of rebuilding our relationship. He also started treating me with genuine respect during family visits, rather than the entitled demands I had received for years. No more assumptions about my property being available for his family's lifestyle improvements. No more criticism of my business decisions or suggestions about how I should spend my money. Dad, thank you for still being willing to have a relationship with us after how badly I treated you, Marcus said genuinely during a visit to my house last month. Jennifer's adjustment to their new financial reality was challenging, but ultimately healthy for their family's independence and character development. Without the free housing, they both started working harder and making smarter decisions about money and lifestyle choices. Robert, we're actually becoming better people because we know our future depends entirely on our own efforts, Jennifer told me during a recent conversation. The motivation was appropriate even if it came from necessity rather than choice. Marcus's search for affordable housing became his primary focus after the house sale closed in March. They found a 3-bedroom rental in a different school district for $2,800 monthly, which stretched their budget, but taught them the real cost of housing independence. Dad, I never realized how expensive it is to pay for your own place, Marcus admitted to me. Living in your house for free made me take housing costs for granted. Most importantly, Marcus started showing genuine appreciation for basic family relationships, rather than viewing me as some obligation to be managed politely while receiving benefits. Dad, I'm grateful that you still want to spend time with your grandchildren despite my cruel Christmas behavior. Became regular expressions of gratitude. I realize now how much I took for granted while assuming I deserved free housing just because I was your son. These were the kinds of mature comments that had been missing from our interactions for years. My financial security improved dramatically after selling the Maple Street property and reinvesting the proceeds in rental properties with appreciative tenants. The $699,000 was used to purchase 2 smaller rental houses that generate over $4,800 monthly in rent from families who understand the value of good landlords. My investment income increased, while my family's stress decreased significantly. I also started spending more time with friends and community activities rather than worrying about Marcus's entitled attitude toward my generosity. Robert, you seem more relaxed and confident lately, my neighbor Bill observed during one of our weekend conversations. Standing up for your dignity was good for your peace of mind. He was right that protecting my respect had improved my overall happiness and family relationships. The community response to my boundary setting was overwhelmingly supportive from neighbors, business associates, and church members who heard the full story. Robert did exactly what he should have done, became the common reaction from people who understood Marcus's Christmas behavior. Nobody deserves to be told they're not needed by their own son while providing free housing. The validation helped confirm that my actions were appropriate and justified. My relationship with the grandchildren actually improved after their father learned important lessons about family respect and appreciation. Grandpa Robert, Dad says we should be grateful for who you are, not what you give us, my granddaughter Emma told me during a recent visit. We love spending time with you even when you don't give us free things. Their innocent honesty showed that children understand genuine relationships better than entitled adults. Marcus eventually thanked me for teaching him important lessons about family relationships through firm consequences rather than endless enabling. Dad, I'm glad you sold the house instead of rewarding my disrespectful behavior, he told me 2 months after they moved out. I learned more about appreciation and responsibility from facing real consequences than I ever would have from continued free housing. His gratitude for my boundary setting showed genuine growth in understanding personal responsibility. Looking back on this entire experience, I learned crucial lessons about family relationships and property ownership that every person should understand. First, generosity toward family members doesn't create obligations to tolerate disrespectful treatment or cruel behavior. Marcus's Christmas attack showed his true character, and continuing to provide free housing would have only enabled more entitlement and ingratitude. Second, sometimes permanent consequences are necessary to create real change in people's attitudes toward family and money. Marcus's apologies would never have led to genuine respect if he knew the free housing was still available regardless of his behavior. Only by losing everything did he learn to value relationships over financial benefits and assumptions. Most importantly, I learned that protecting your dignity improves family relationships for everyone involved. At 68 years old, I finally have the respect and appreciation I always deserved, but had been afraid to demand from ungrateful family members who took my property ownership for granted. Today, Marcus treats me like a valued father instead of some automatic source of housing benefits to be managed for maximum advantage. Our conversations focus on genuine family connection rather than his assumptions about my obligations to provide free accommodation. He learned that family support must be earned through consistent respect and appreciation, not expected because of blood relationships. The son who told me they didn't need me anymore discovered that housing security and family wealth work both ways in relationships built on mutual respect. If you are still here and enjoyed this story, please like this video. It really helps me know you want more content like this. If this story gave you some value or made you think, please share it with your friends or someone who needs to hear this message. If you have any questions or suggestions about this story, please type them in the comments below. I love reading what you think. If you want more stories like this one, please subscribe to this channel. There are many more stories coming. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by setting boundaries and demanding the respect you deserve.